Hello everyone, Greg Bennett here, and I'd like to thank you for joining me for this presentation on the Greg Bennett Torino series by those wonderful folks at SAMIC. And what we're going to do today is just take you through this guitar from the very tip of the headstock all the way down to the end pin. By the way, there are two of them rather than one. A headstock is an interesting part of the guitar, and most people give it very little thought, but there's some tremendous performance advantages in this. You'll notice that I usually use a smaller headstock, which means that there's a reduced resonant surface. And what that means is if that headstock is resonating, if that's moving, you know that that energy is being taken off the string. So when you reduce that resonance, you leave more energy on the string. You actually get a hotter attack, longer sustain, and just more power. And we also cock the headstock back, which serves to put a lot of string pressure. As you increase that angle, you create more string pressure, more bearing pressure at the nut, which means that that energy on the string comes to that point and has a great deal of trouble getting past it. When you make the headstock smaller like we do, you also reduce the distance from the nut to the machine head, and that almost exponentially increases that downward pressure, further enhancing the performance. You'll also notice that the gears on our guitars converge, the tuning machines, rather than flare, and that gives you a nice straight, the string, a nice straight path through the nut, which is nice for tuning. And speaking of tuning, we use these beautiful Grover machine heads, which I'm just real partial to. They just feel really soft to the touch. There's no harsh edges. The design of them really plays into the line study of the guitars, and they're just a great die-cast machine head, great accuracy. I think it's 13 or 14 to 1 ratio. And little things like we talked about. You'll also notice that the logo and the signature are from laser-cut gold foil. There'll be no decals or silk screens on these guitars. And by the way, even on the very lowest price guitars that we offer that are satin, the face of that headstock is always gloss. So when mom and dad are walking along that row of guitars, it just looks like $1,000,000. All right, moving along into the neck, we use a graphite saddle, or a nut, I should say. And the reason for that is it's sort of self-lubricating, so the string doesn't get bound up in the nut. And it has a nice consistency. You get great performance without sort of making it a sterile sound. So we use graphite there. It's a 1 5/8 inch width, which is a really nice, comfortable feel. It's you've got enough spread on the strings to be accurate with chords, and the neck isn't so wide that it feels like a baseball bat. And we get the most wonderful comments from players about the neck. It's just a really wonderful shape and size, and it's another thing that can add significantly to how the string performs, and most people don't think of it in that way. You've got this long, literally structural member hanging out here, and the deeper it is and the wider it is, the stronger it is, the more rigid it is. And so what happens is you increase that rigidity, you increase the performance capabilities of the string. In other words, a hot attack, a long sustain. So it's just a really nice blend of depth and width, and it's beveled enough, the camber is sculpted enough that it just feels really great in your hands. We use a nickel silver polished fret, which just feels great. And also we have kind of a large radius, which is really great. It feels good for chords, and when you bend, especially up high, it doesn't fight you. We use a rosewood fingerboard, which is a really, really dense wood, which is, again, great for string performance, but really durable when you have to make adjustments or you have to do fret finishing or anything of that nature. All right, now we're down to the neck joint, and typically on guitars like this, which have sort of a thin body and a lot of exposure on the neck can be a bit flexible. So you'll notice I brought the body up there, and we have a really nice beefy heel, which really adds to the rigidity of the neck. And again, by doing that, that neck stops acting like a shock absorber and stealing energy off the strings. This is 22 fret neck, and most pros really do prefer that. You can get up into the high registers, you can comfortably bend. Well, what I like about it is by keeping it at 22 frets, you're able to get the spacing on the pickups, and that means that your pickups fall under the harmonic hotspots. And this is sort of an interesting design challenge that we had on this body. This sort of style where you have these smaller equal cutaways, and by the way, if you haven't noticed, the top one is a smidge larger when they're actually exactly the same size. It's a visual thing where the top one actually looks smaller. So if you're wondering why it's a smidge bigger, that's why. But typically this guitar, the waist is down about 3.5 inches, and you actually have a format where the lower bout is smaller than the bigger bout, upper bout rather, which is sort of the opposite of the format we're used to. And it looks really cool, but I've always wanted to kind of take this style and put it into a more traditional format. So I did. I moved the waist about 3.5 inches north, brought the upper bout in, and actually made the cutaways a little bit larger. Okay, moving along, the bridge is a traditional adjustable bridge, and the beauty in this setup is you get a lot of string angle over the saddle, which again serves to give you a really hot string, a lot of sustain, and just a lot of punch. And the actual size of the bridge is pretty traditional, but what we do is make a bridge stud that's about 3 times the size of a normal stud, and when you couple that with this sort of massive flange anchor that the stud screws into, you get a really, really rigid bridge, and that also means that you're pulling less energy off the string. And one thing I like to point out too is that most people never think of the stop piece as a tone control, and it really is. As you take that stop piece down and increase that string pressure over the saddle, you actually get a brighter, punchier string. If you want a mellower, maybe a little more bluesy or a warmer, some might call it a brown sound, you just raise that stop piece up and you create less pressure at the saddle and you get a bit warmer sounding string. You'll note that it's an arch top, and that arch top coupled with this alder body, which is sort of an unusual choice of wood for this style guitar, really gives this guitar a wonderful voice. It's almost vocal, especially when you overdrive your amp and you get a bit of distortion. It really sounds almost vocal, very much like it's singing. What I did here is create an arch top, and what that does is put a lot of mass under the bridge. Again, it makes for a rigid platform. It prevents the guitar, which is literally a platform for the strings, it prevents the guitar from stealing energy off the string. And then it's a rather thin body when you get back from the arch, which gives it a little bit of resonance. And when you couple that with this alder wood, which is it's really a wonderful, has really wonderful tone qualities, you get a very nice brightness, but it's smooth, it's glassy, it's not harsh. And again, that's what adds to that sort of vocal sound and really makes the guitar very distinctive tone-wise. So you get a lot of string punch, the sustain is fantastic, and you get this really complex harmonic overtone and just this really rich sound without being the least bit mushy. Pressing on, I did want to mention that we're using Duncan design pickups, and these are very much a traditional sounding double coil pickup. They're not designed to emphasize a brighter sound or distortion qualities. It's designed to pull out every bit of tone quality we can out of this guitar. And a lot of guys that do try replacement pickups are sort of surprised, because what a replacement pickup often does is adds a lot of punch to the sound. Well, the guitar is already so efficient that you don't notice that so much as you notice the tone change. But again, the pickup is designed to bring out the best in this guitar. The back, as you'll see, is alder, and again, that adds to that just rich sound with clarity. And a very simple, straight-ahead electronics, one volume and one tone control with a toggle switch, and it just makes it very fast on stage and really comfortable. And you'll also notice on the bottom we have 2 strap buttons, which are really great. The guitar actually feels different to the player depending upon which strap button you use, and then if you do want to lean your guitar up against an amp or a wall or a sofa or something, it's more stable. This is the TR3 model, which is one of the core models, and I used a quilt top on it, but it's what we call a high-tech top. It actually is a photo finish, and the reason we do that is because there's some severe arches, some carving on the top, and a typical wood veneer just won't roll over that without splitting. And some people are concerned about it, but it really keeps the price really, really economical, and it just gives a great look. As the same as if somebody wanted a flashy graphic or a sparkle finish. It's like tribute to Mother Nature without quite the cost on it. Again, this is a core model. There are two models below this. There's a TR1 and a TR2 that are flat top versions of this with sculpted edges, very traditional looking guitars. Because of that, the removal of the arch, it actually is a little bit darker sound, a little bit warmer, a little bit richer. And a lot of guys that love those British speakers with those quad cabs, which throw off a really, really bright sound, those guitars are a great match for that, because that added warmth and kind of low-mid emphasis really works great with those speakers. And then there's a couple custom versions we have. This is a sort of a sparkle black. It's also available in a white pearl.